last class we've seen what is boxing. Boxing is a process wherein you take the ordinary or a simple type or a value type and then place them in the heap. Value types are usually placed in the stack, and so because they are placed in the stack, there is no overhead of a garbage collector. However, the problem with the value type is whenever you use the value type, all the object oriented concept, that is all your inheritance and this kind of thing, they are not really available there. So you will not be able to allocate additional memory and all sorts of problem will come. So we need to put them in the heap. Now there is the other reason why we need to put the value type in the heap, and the major reason why we are doing it is when we have the simple type. You are familiar that all the simple types are nothing but structures. They are not the classes. So if you want to treat the simple type as classes of or object of some class, then you can think of pushing them into the stack or from the stack to the heap and use them. Now when you try to box, what is happening is the value type is pushed as an object type. So you are very familiar. The int, if you take int, float or anything, they are all structure. Now what is the meaning of saying boxing is we are trying to convert this value type into either an object type. So you're familiar with this object, system.object, or you can think of converting them as an interface. Okay, one among them is true, and then use it. So when you call this process of boxing, what usually CLR does is it places your value inside that system.object. This is the main class. It bracks it under that class and places it into the heap. Then you can use that object or you can use that value as though it is an object. So let's take a simple example. I have int I is equal to 1, 2, 3, and you know very well it is a structure as such. Now when I say object O is equal to I, if I say that thing, object O equal to I, what is that I'm trying to do is I'm first taking this, you will notice that this is object, it is not the value type. So when I assign this, what is happening? You can look at this diagram and you will get what is going on. So when I say I is equal to 1, 2, 3, the value itself is stored in this stack. When I say object O equal to I, you know very well object is a reference type. So what is stored in this stack is the name of the variable O and a reference to a object which is stored in the stack. Which is stored in the heap. So this 1, 2, 3 value is now stored in the heap. Then you can use all the application of whatever that is applicable to the objects which are in the heap are automatically valid here. Again, once you do this particular thing, once you say object O equal to I, if you change the value of this I, that will not affect the object because both of them are now separate entity. Now what is unboxing? Unboxing is getting it back. Suppose if you have a object which is placed in the heap and if you want to get it to the stack, then you can think of using unboxing. Now unboxing is a reverse process. So let's look at the process here. So I have the same example. I is equal to 1, 2, 3 and I take them to the heap by saying object O equal to I. This is the process of boxing. Unboxing is you take the same object which was there on the heap and bring it back to the stack. How do I do that is I just typecast it as the specific value type and then assign it to a particular value type. So this is what I do. This is, you are familiar with the concept of typecasting. The same concept is nothing but the boxing and unboxing. However, the difference between this and typecasting is in the typecasting you are temporarily trying to change one variable from one type to the other. Maybe you want to change temporarily you want to treat a int like a long or a single like a double or something. You want to temporarily shift them. In that case, you use the typecasting. Here, what we are doing is we are taking the value from the stack and placing it into the heap, and from the heap we are getting it back. So that is what is unboxing. So unboxing is conversion from the object which is here to the value, or if you have an interface also you can get it back. However, there are few things you must note, and one is when you try to get it back, when you try to get a boxed object back, that is when you are unboxing it, you must be very careful. That is, if you have boxed a integer, you can't get it to a float. That is not allowed. So before the unboxing occurs, it first checks the object instance to make sure that the boxed value has a given value. What is the meaning of this is, if you suppose say you have boxed something, O is boxed here, I is boxed as something else. Now if this, you know very well, it's a reference type, and reference type can always have a null value associated with it. Suppose if you have a null pointer or null reference, that can be reference back, or that can be unboxed. Again, the other one is copying the value from the instance into the same value type. For example, I took this int and I boxed it. Now when I'm unboxing it back, I'm taking it back to integer itself. I'm not taking it back to something else. So when you take a value and box it, and if you want to unbox it back, you have to get it back to the same type. So if it's an integer that went on to the other side, it must come back as integer itself. It can't come as something else. So that is not allowed. Okay. The few other things, if you try to unbox a null reference, then you get a null reference exception. That means if the reference type is pointing nowhere, for example, in this case, if this object was not pointing anywhere, that means null reference. In that case, if you try to unbox it, you get a null reference. And the other one, if you try to unbox a reference to a incompatible values, then you get a error message. However, there is implicit conversions of that will take place. For example, if you take an integer and get it back as a long, nothing will happen, because long can anytime take the value of an int. You know very well, long is larger than int. That is a compatible type. In that case, nothing will happen. But if it's an incompatible type, for example, you are trying to get a float and then trying to put it into an int, both are not compatible. In that case, this error or this invalid cast exception is thrown, and you may have to handle that particular thing. Let's look at the other one, that is the pointers. Now you are already familiar. Pointer is something that holds the memory address of some other location or some other type. You can think of using pointers within the your C# program. However, whenever you are trying to use a pointer, the CLR will not execute that particular code. It is left out, so it is not a managed code, and in particular we say that it is unsafe code. So whatever that is, all manipulation that you are doing using a pointer are all unsafe, and you have to mark the unsafe tag for the code that is or that deals with the pointer, so that the compiler very well knows that this code is not managed by the CLR. Now we have the same old thing for the pointers. So we have a dereferencing symbol, that is star, and we have the ampersand operator to get the address of. For example, if I have the int I equal to 5, if I create a pointer in star p, I can assign the address of I, and then if I want to assign a value to this I, then I can say star p is equal to 10. It is the same thing. There is no difference between these two things. Okay. You can use the pointers with any type, any value type. However, there are few restrictions when you think of using it with the reference type. I'll talk about it. So the pointers can be used for int, short, anything you can use it. You can use it for enumerator. You can use it to point to some other pointer also, that is also defined. If you are creating a structure, remember structure is a value type. If you create your own structures using struct, and if you create your own structure, you can use a pointer to your structures. It is all valid. What is not valid is if you try to access a reference type. I will talk about it later. Let's look at a few examples. So this will create a single pointer. This is pointer to pointer. You are familiar with it, double star. This is a pointer to a single dimensional array that can point to integers. So this is it's an array that can point to other pointers. So it's like a array of pointers, then it is a pointer to character, and it is a pointer to nowhere. So this is a void pointer, and you know very well why do you use this void pointer. Suppose if you want to cast, or if you want to use this pointer to point to any other type, this was what you were doing in your C program. Suppose if you want to create like a universal pointer that can point to integer, float, anything, a pointer that can point to anything. If you want to create it, just create a void pointer. You know very well void can be casted to anything. So by just typecasting, you can use this pointer and point to anything. However, the same concept is there, but it is strictly not recommended to try and do this kind of thing. However, you might have done this thing in your C program, but here it is a bit not a very advisable thing from Microsoft to use the void pointers. You can use it at your own risk. Again, few changes in your C program. If you want to create 5 pointers, you used to say int star star p1, star p2, star p3, and so on. You used to create like this, but that syntax is not allowed. If you want to create a pointers p1, p2, p3, you have to put only one star into the int. Rest is assume that in this case, the minute you put a star, it means to say that p1, p2, p3 are all pointers. There, it is not p1 is only pointer. Everything is a pointer. So this syntax is not allowed. So even if you try it in the Visual Studio, you get an error message. I won't waste my time on that. Okay. One other important thing: pointers do not inherit from object. So that is very important thing. What is the meaning of it? I told you in the last class that in C#, everything starts from this system.object. Everything, the hierarchy starts from system.object. However, there is an exception for the pointer. Pointer is not starting from the system.object. It is on its own. You may then say that why do you call it as C# as a full-fledged object-oriented programming language? The reason is pointer is not a good way of using a data type. Instead of pointer, you can anytime use the reference type. Reference type behaves exactly like a pointer. It also holds the address of some other location. However, reference type is always managed by CLR. So CLR will take care whether a reference is actually pointing to some object on the heap, or is it a null, or is it a dangling. All these things are automatically taken care by the CLR. So the entire code is managed, whereas the minute you say it is a pointer, CLR just moves out of that scene and you are on your own. So pointers, even though if you read the Microsoft documentation, they don't talk much about pointers because they don't expect anybody to use pointers. However, that the concepts are there as far as the language is there. This is still valid. Okay. Also, there is nothing called as boxing and unboxing, because pointers can be pointed to a object type variables. So you can't point to an object using the pointer. That is not allowed. What is the meaning of it? If I create a student class, and if I create a object s1 is equal to new student, I can't use a pointer to point to that. It is not allowed. Pointers always point to a value type, that is simple type or predefined or whatever you call it as. Only the existing data type can only be pointed using the pointers. The value types can only be pointed by them. You cannot point to a object type. That's the reason you have no way in which you can point to the or you can box or unbox it. Again, if a pointer can point to a structure, but there is a restriction, provided the structure itself is not using a reference variable. What is the meaning of it? If you create a structure, any name, and inside that if you create a string yes name, for example, if you're creating a structure for a student, inside that if you create a field string, you know very well string is an object, then using a pointer you can't point to this structure. The structure itself, if it contains any object references, you can't point to such a structure using the pointer. That is a restriction. The reason why that is there is, remember, all these objects are placed on the heap, and heap is completely controlled by the garbage collector. Now what the garbage collector is usually doing is, when there is a structure that has a reference to an object in the heap, the garbage collector only checks whether the structure is using it. It won't come back and check whether a pointer is pointing to this structure or not. So it is not going towards the pointer. So what will happen is, if they allow the pointers to point to a structure that has a reference to a heap, then it may so happen that the garbage collector may remove that object and the pointer may still be pointing to one of the reference. So you know very well, when such a thing happens, it's like you are passing through a linked list and suddenly you find that that node or that whatever you call that link node or whatever you call that node disappears from the list. So you traverse across the link, suddenly one of them fails. This is what happens. From the pointer you come to a structure, but suddenly you find that some part of the structure is missing altogether because garbage collector has already removed that object out of its reference. So to avoid all these kind of confusions, what they have done is, if a pointer, if you want to point to a structure, the structure must contain all value type variables. If any object type variables are there or object type fields are there inside a structure, you can't use a pointer to point to that. So some restrictions are there with the pointer. I've talked about that. Okay. Now, what are the operators that you can think of using? You are already familiar with these operators. The star, the access, member access. There is nothing much which is there. However, you can use stack alloc. I won't talk about it. If you want to, I think it was. If you want to refer to that, these are the operators that are allowed in the pointers. We don't use the pointers. Let's I think I will give a direct demo instead of going to that. Let me try to create a pointer. I have already opened a console application in C#. So how do I create a pointers? Now I'm going to create it under a separate class. So I'm going to create a separate class here. So I'm going to say class, say my class, and I'm going to derive a method, say public. This class, this method will not return anything, and say my method. Then I want to use the pointer. So in the minute I put int and put a star and say ptr and put a semicolon, I end up in a trouble, and it just says that you are using pointers, but pointers are fixed, but they are unsafe. If you read that full, you can read at leisure that particular thing. So I'm going to say this method is unsafe. This is a keyword to say that that method is unsafe. Directly we say that that method is unsafe, then the compiler will not bother about it. Now it just says you are not pointing to anything. Let's say I'm going to create a int variable, int x equal to 10. How do I point ptr to that? So ptr is equal to ampersand of x. You are already familiar. Int. Okay, this is, I'm pointing to the same location. Then what's the next thing that you can think of doing? So star ptr equal to 10. I think I will make it as 400. Okay, that's enough. So I will use cw to print the value. How do I print the address? Address is, how do I get the address? How to get the address? So if I type ptr and do it, I'll get an error message because I want to convert this into int. I will convert that address into int. What did I do here is, this ptr contains an address. You are already familiar with the pointers. ptr contains address. I'm just converting that address into a integer variable. If you want, you convert it to long. It's up to you. Then what do I want? Value is, how do I get the value? Yes, how do I get the value? Star ptr, will it give me the value? Yes. Okay, I'm going to go over here and create a new instance of class. So I'm going to say my class m is equal to new class. You may be thinking, why didn't I type everything here? If I type everything here, I will make this static void main itself as a unsafe class, that means everything goes out of CLR. So then entire program is out of CLR. So I don't want that thing to happen. I want this static void main to be part of CLR, but I don't want this class method to be part of CLR. So I'm going to just call m dot my method. Now if you straight away start compiling it, you get a error message saying that this thing can't be compiled. There is no error, but it just says I can't compile it. The reason it says is if you want to compile it with the special symbol /unsafe. When you do that unsafe, what the compiler will do is the CLR part it will take it separate, and the pointer part it will take separate. So when this thing goes to the CLR will take its part, the other part, that is pointer part, is given to the OS to take it on its own. So how can I get this particular thing? I will go to the properties here, double click on this property. I have in the compile part, in the compiler part here, where is that build, you have an option called, allow unsafe code. This is same as putting /unsafe. Now if you are using the compiler, command line compiler, that is if you are using this CSC, this is the command line compiler, how you type this Java. There is also this compiler is there, CSC. This is a Microsoft compiler. For C#, it is a command line. For this, you can anytime use unsafe. During the compile, you can use that thing. Now I'm not specifying the file name, so it is still complaining me that give me the file file which need to be compiled. So here it is the same simple thing. Allow the unsafe code from the build. That's it. I'm going to run this thing now. I'm going to save this thing and give it a try. That thing will not stop. It's not going to stop because I have not put console.readline. I'll just put one. Console.readline. This is just to stop it from taking away that command line. So this is the address, value is 400. I've done the same thing. You notice the address is something I don't care. Value is from 10, it was changed back to 400, and that is what is the way in which you can do it. There is another way in which you can create the unsafe code. Suppose if you don't want the entire method to be unsafe, if you don't want this entire method to be unsafe, you can create a block and then say unsafe. Okay, you can do this, that thing, and then place the unsafe part within the method, and this here. So this is also possible. Now what is the difference between this and the previous one is, in this case the entire method is not unsafe, only this part from this flower bracket till the end of this flower bracket, the code is unsafe. So you can make part of the code rather than making the entire method unsafe, only part of the code as unsafe and leave the other part as safe. So you can have a mixture of safe and unsafe code. Whenever you are using pointer, just don't forget to use the unsafe. This is the same thing I have explained. Here I have two variables, x and y. X and y are given some values, and I am trying to print the pointer values by converting it into integer. This is going to print the address, this is going to print their values. So there is nothing much here. The same thing with the unsafe put inside the code. Okay, let's come back to the variables. You are already familiar with the variables. I will quickly go through this. Variable, C# is a type safe language. You are already familiar. Variables must be declared and the type must be known, and only those type can be assigned to the variable. The exception is if the types are compatible, then you can use the other type. For example, if you have created a long and if you try to give an integer, it takes. If you create a double and if you give a single precision value, it takes it because they are compatible. Otherwise, the operations which are not allowed in the type is restricted by the compiler, and you get the compile time error itself. Variables can hold either a value type or a reference type. If you create a value type variables like int, float, and all those things, then it can directly contain the value. Suppose if you create a reference type variable, such like a student, employee, or this kind of object type thing, then it can contain a reference to the object which is there in the heap. You are already familiar. There is the other thing. Another, when you create this reference type variable, you know very well, you can have two variables pointing to the same object. You've done that particular thing. So I can say, for example, just say, we'll see that. Okay, isn't that the student? Created the student yes equal to new student. Isn't that I have created this class? Now I can say student yes to equal to yes. Now what is happening in this case? I have yes pointing to one object in the heap. So this is what is happening here, and I have yes1 pointing to the same object. So both of them are pointing to the same object. It is allowed because you are just having the reference. Okay. The other one is, how do I declare the variable? The syntax is, you specify the data type, you specify the value type. If you want to have more than one type of variables, data type followed by the variable type, and if you want to initialize them then and there, you can say new data type, or you can directly assign the value. You are already familiar. Now these are called as variable names, or other name for them is identifier. And like all the other programming languages, C# also has some restriction on the identifier. The restrictions are it must contain letters, digit, or underscore. The same thing, variable name must contain digit, letters, and underscore. It must start with a letter or an underscore. It can start with a variable name, ordinary variable name. Okay, and C# keywords are not allowed as the variable names. That is same old thing from any programming language. This is true. Let's look at some example. Again, this is a waste of time. So I have this int number equal to something. The variables that you can think of using. Whenever you are using a variable inside class, you can also give the visibility for that variable. That is, you can make it a private, protected, or public, whatever you want to do it. So you can associate the accessibility along with the variable, provided it is there inside the class, which is true in most of the cases. And the next one is, if you create a const variable, that is constant, their values can be changed. It is well known thing. We have all this type of operators which you are already familiar with. You have the arithmetic operator, assignment operator, increment, bit shift comparison, size of, type of, and string concatenation plus, and delegate concatenation. I'm not very sure whether you have studied the delegate. I think you studied this applet, then you know what is a delegate. If you want to add that pointer of the other function here to the delegate, you can use this thing, and if you want to remove it, you can do it. If you have forgotten this concept, I will tell you how to use this operator later. Then we have bitwise. The other one is indirection and casting and conditional. But I'm not going to go in depth into it, except that there is two types of operators called as checked and unchecked type. What is this checked and unchecked type? Whenever you are doing the calculation with the integral variables, for example, numbers, when you add two numbers or when you multiply two numbers, it may so happen that the result may go beyond the scope of the given variable. For example, if you take an integer variable and if you start multiplying something 2 to the power n to the power something, you know very well, integer can go up to 64,000. So if it goes beyond 64,000, if the calculation goes beyond 64,000, then what will happen? So that is what is use of this checked operators. You have two operators. Checked, the word itself is used, checked and unchecked. Checked means you are telling the compiler, if the overflow occurs, throw an exception. If you say unchecked, you are just telling the compiler, don't throw an exception, I will handle it, okay, on my own. So if you say checked and some numerical expression that has some calculation, if you do that, checked and some calculation, and after performing the calculation, if the result goes beyond the limit of the data type, Usually, remember, this is all numerical data types. If it goes beyond the limit of the numerical data type, and if you say it is a checked expression, compiler will throw an error if it detects at compile time. If you have, for example, 35,000 plus 35,000, if you just write int x is equal to 35,000 plus 35,000, if you do that thing, then what will happen? 35 plus 35 is 70, which is beyond 64,000. So if you just type this constant value 35,000 plus 35,000, compiler automatically will detect and say that 35 plus 35 is 70, which is beyond integer. At compile time only, it will start giving you an error message saying that this is beyond the scope of integer. Suppose if you say int x and int y, and then multiply int x into y. So the value of x and y is not known during the compile time. So this is the meaning of saying checked and unchecked. So if you say checked something, just I think I have the value here. So you look at this particular thing. Now I have assigned a value, very large value, x and y. If I start multiplying it, definitely it goes beyond 64,000. When I say int, this is because int, you are supposed to return an integer value, checked x into y. When you start multiplying these two things, the value will be beyond 64,000. And since the values are already known to the compiler at compile time, compiler itself will throw an exception saying that that's not allowed because it goes beyond 64,000. Now, if you don't want the compiler to give any complaint, so you can say unchecked. So when you say unchecked, what it will do? 4 bytes are given for integers. Now 64,000 is full. If you say 65,000, 75,000 or 70,000, I don't know in your case, isn't that this is the low level bit, this is the higher level bit. Now when you say 65,000, the bit is full, this is a high level bit. Now above 65,000, these bits from the high end, that is the highest order bit, it goes that side. Now what happens if you say unchecked? You are just saying that ignore what goes beyond 4 bytes, take whatever that is left in that 4 byte and give it to the program. So that is the meaning of saying unchecked. If the value goes beyond 4 bytes, get the 4 byte value, leave the other things, let it go to ether. I don't mind losing those values. That is called as unchecked. Now there are 3 things that are given over here. Here I am cross verifying that this is checked, so I will get an error message. This time I am telling the compiler, don't check it, I am ready to accept the value, and you notice that it got some value which is the lower bits which are left out. The value in the lower bits, 4 bytes or whatever that is left out, is taken and given that thing. What about this thing? In this case, definitely it goes beyond 64,000. Now it depends on what is the default that is there with the compiler. Most of the time, default is ignore the error, go ahead with it. Now, if this thing happens at runtime, if you say checked, unless isn't that I have not assigned some value, but at runtime, if x and y got some values which are beyond, after multiplying, if it goes beyond integer, then you get a runtime exception. So that is possible. If you say unchecked, there won't be any runtime exception. So the runtime exception is system overflow exception. Let's look at this operator precedence now. We have the precedence for the operators. We have the highest and lowest precedence. What is the meaning of saying precedence? The BODMAS rule that you are usually applying on the operators, which are usually applied. So this part is very quick. I'll go very quickly. The if statement, because it is mentioned in your syllabus, the conditions. So I don't want to miss out that. There is operators, flow and iteration. I will quickly go through it. You are already familiar. How do I write the condition? If condition, straight away you can write in front of it only, you can write the expression, or within the bracket. If you have more than one line of code to be executed, you can put it inside the bracket. Again, you can associate it with the logical operators, that is the ampersand and or conditions. You can put that. You can also have else statement with the if and else within it. You are already familiar. Also, C sharp supports the ternary operator. I don't know if you are familiar with it. A question mark and this operator. I hope you are familiar with the operator. Question mark followed by something and colon operator. So, if the condition is true, this part is taken up. Otherwise, the other part is taken up. This is a shortcut for writing its statement. For example, you take the car color as green, then you check whether the car color is equal to red. So this indicates this if statement. If the car color is red, this will be returned. Otherwise, this is written. Now, because the color is green, you get the false condition. This is the true condition. If true, this is executed. If false, this is executed. So, in this case, we have the question mark, that is if the condition is true up to this point. So, full thing up to here, entire thing will be executed. If the condition is true, then we have this colon separator. If the condition is false, the other thing will be executed. In this case, it is just trying to assign it to the response. So, if your car is green, you have a green car. Because it is not there, you will get option as you don't have a green car. The next one is nested if within the other if else if and put the condition, it goes on. You are already familiar with it. Then we have one more operator called as switch operator. You are already familiar with the switch operator. Switch provide an expression. The expression could be either integer value or it could be a string value. Both are valid. Int or string is valid here. If you are from Visual Basic, there are some restrictions. Visual Basic is actually that thing is awesome. You can do anything with that switch statement. That craze is not here with the C# switch. You can only take integral or expression value. However, how do I write this particular thing? If case followed by one of the possible value of this expression, then write the statement and finally write the jump statement. Jump is usually break or go to statement. You can write any one of them. I will quickly give an example that has go to inside it. So this part I'm not really interested in this class anymore. So I'm going to get rid of this class. I'll come back to this one now. So I don't have anything. I'm going to say int x equal to 10. Then I'm going to say switch. Switch on the value of x. Take the value here. Case, I think control key B, control key. It's not taking it. Let it. Case 1. I'm going to say CW. Case 1. Okay. Okay. Then I'm supposed to put a break here. I will take case 2 here. Then I'm going to take the value, say console W, and I'm going to say case 2 here. Then I can say go to case 1. That's allowed. Okay, so that is allowed. Space case 1. Okay. Then I say case 3. Then console W, say case 3. Then break. As usual, we have the default with us. I think this is the end, and I'm going to say console dot read line. Make it stop. Now I'm going to put the value x is equal to 3. You know very well. This will go as straight 1. Huh? Try. I think that 5 will work. What is wrong? There's something wrong with it. I started with the one bracket, extra bracket, okay. Control KK. Okay, now I think everything is proper. We'll just give it a try. Case 3 is straightforward. I must get the answer. For K3, I must get the answer. K3, I have the answer. Same as, like, slightly move this up. Okay, case 3, the I equal to 3 is the same one. I will just try to do it with the other one, that is case 2. Now, what is going to happen if you use this case 2 as your option? Press F5 to get the answer. You will notice that it's going to come here for the case 2, and then it will go back to case 1, and then it will break up. So if you come here to the case 2, go to case 1, then come back. You can do it anyway. One of the simplest example is when you want to calculate income tax. Now, when you calculate the income tax, suppose the income tax limit is up to how they calculate the income tax is up to 1.5 lakhs. Income, there is for the first 1.5 lakhs, the income tax is 0. Then for the next remaining 50,000, that is at 2%. Then that is 1,50,000 to 2 lakhs. So that 50,000 will get 2% for that 50,000. Then from remaining 1 lakh, if from that again they say if for the next 1 lakh it is 3%. So how it goes? If your annual income is 3 lakh rupees, so for the first 1.5 lakh rupees there is no tax. The remaining 50,000, that is 1.5 lakhs to 2 lakhs, then you get 50%, 2% for that 50,000. The remaining last 1 lakh, you get 3%. So they are adding like that. So it is like you get the rebate, everybody gets the rebate. First 1.5 lakhs is free. Then it starts. For the next one slot, what is it? So if you go up, like if you have 1 lakh, 1 crore and so on, then it goes on, that slot goes on increasing. But the person who is earning 10 crores, the 1.5 lakhs will not be taxed. So it is free for them also. In that case, you may want to go to the condition 1, then condition 2, like if you have 1 crore, then go to this 1 crore first, then come back to 50 lakhs, then 25 lakhs, like that. If you want to shift between the case statement, you can anytime do that thing by writing the go to statement. So this is a simple way how you can use this go to statement. I have the next simple option. Now, if you want the same action to be taken for all of them, condition 1, 2, 3, then don't write any statement, write case 1, case 2, case 3, continuous. Then for the case 3, write some action, then put a break. This is allowed. So it means to say that for all these cases, there is only one option that you are going to use it. This is allowed. However, unlike Visual Basic has a lot of things. You can say from 10 to 15, then 90 to 95, like that. You can put condition and do it. Such a flexible if statement is not allowed. This is the other example. If you want to say that thing leisurely at home, you can say that thing. That's the same type of example that I'm trying to use it. Here I'm trying to go to statement 1, then go to case 1. So I'm trying to do it. So what I'm trying to do is I will add 25. So it is actually the amount that you're getting. You will get the 25 plus 25 regardless of the other two options. So if you say I'm going for the second option, then you get 25 from the second option plus 25 from the first option. So if you say I'm going for the third option, you get 50 from this option and 25 from the first option. So it's like first option is free. So it's like you buy a household thing, pressure cooker is free regardless of that. So we buy television, the pressure cooker is given, refrigerator, pressure cooker is given. So that option is there. This option is there for every possible selection. So that means we are just taking it back to the first one, adding it and going ahead. Okay, let's go to the next one. You are familiar, do while in for loop. So we have this while loop, you are already familiar. While condition is tested first and you do something, you have done it plenty of times. Then we have do while statement. The difference between do while and while is while you write the condition at the beginning, in the do while you write the condition at the end. What is the difference? This will at least execute one time, whereas this may or may not execute one or more time, because the condition is right at the beginning. Right at the beginning, if the condition is false, this loop will not be executed even at once. Whereas because the condition is at the end, this loop, regardless of this condition, will be executed at least once. That part is there. Then we have this for condition for initialization, condition, and increment. You are already used it. There is a slightly varied version of it, that is for each, which is usually used with the collection. Suppose if you have a collection of either integer array, actually it's a collection of I enumerable. Any object that implements I enumerable interface can be used with this one. So if you have an object, a collection of object, or the array, you can quickly go through it. You've already seen that thing. The next one is break and continue statement. You are already familiar. Whenever you write this break statement in the iteration, it will break the loop. Whereas when you say continue, it will not execute what comes after this. It will straight away go to the beginning of the loop, and the loop will continue from this point. So continue means taking it back to the loop, whereas break means coming out completely from the loop and doing something else. Okay. Let's talk about the arrays now. Arrays is nothing but a sequence of similar elements. You are already familiar with this. There are few things that you must know. Every element within the array will contain either value or a reference to something else. Arrays are zero index. That means the first index value is 0. Length of the array is nothing but the total number of elements. Lower bound of the array is same as the index value of the first element. That is, lower bound is 0, which is the same as the index of the first element of the array. Then array can be either single dimensional, multi-dimensional, or jagged array. You are already familiar with this. This you are familiar, some of you may not be familiar. Rank of the array is the number of dimensions it has. How many dimensions it has? If it has 2 dimensions, rank of the array is 2. If it has n dimension, rank of the array is n. So it specifies how many dimensions are there, not how many elements are there. If you want to get how many elements, you go for the length of the array. One important thing, array is derived from a special class called as system.array. All the arrays automatically are inherited from this particular class. Then how to create an array, slightly different from the other programming language. The square bracket must be associated with the data type, not after the variable type. If you put a square bracket after the variable type, compiler will generate an error and say that it's not allowed, it's not able to follow it. And once you create the, declare the element, if you want to create the memory allocation for them, use this new operator followed by the size that you want to use it. Ignore the other type. I'll talk about the initialization of the other type. A few example, a single dimensional array has only one dimension. For example, int array is equal to 100. So you get continuous allocation of 100 elements. The other example that you can think of using is int array equal to new int of 3. This will be array of 3 elements. This one is slightly different. You create a array of 3 elements and immediately you initialize them with the values. So b of 0 will contain 3, b of 1 will contain 4, b of 2 will contain 5. So you immediately initialize it. There is a shortcut. Instead of writing new like this, you can simply say that int array directly equal to value within the flower bracket. This will create a array of length 3 and initialize the values 3, 4, 5 in the array. Again, if you have some classes, you can do that thing. If you are creating a structure, you can again create an array of structure. It is all valid. Then we have multi-dimensional array. Multi-dimensional, usually the examples are usually for 2-dimensional. We have a rectangular array and we have a jagged array. What is the meaning of saying rectangular array? Is the size of the all the rows. So you have the array, 2-dimensional array is a row and column. All of them have a fixed length. All the columns for all the rows are same. Whereas if it is jagged, columns may have different values. I will just show you the example here. If you take this array, this has the first row has 3 columns. second row also has 3 columns. If you take this one, the first row has 3 columns, 1, 2, 3. The second one has 4 columns. So it is not square because the size of the rows vary depending upon their position or depending upon how you are declared. In this type of array is called as jagged array. So wherein you don't get the rectangular structure like how you get in the ordinary array. So let's go back to the first one, that is rectangular array. How do I declare a rectangular array? We say type inside square bracket you put a comma. This is for 2 dimensional. If you want 3 dimensional, put one more comma, you get 3 dimensional. And if you want n dimensional, put n minus 1 comma, and you get all the n dimensions there. Array name equal to new, and specify the size because it's a 2 dimensional, size of the row and size of the column. For example, I get a square array with the comma here. 2, 3. So this is a 2 cross 3 array, 2 rows into 3 columns. So this is the array. Again, as usual, if you want, you can straight away initialize a rectangular array by specifying the flower bracket. This is the dimension of the first row, that is first row will contain 1, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Second row will contain 4, 5, 6. Now what is jagged array is you don't have the rectangular dimension, it is an irregular dimension. How do I declare a jagged array? Look at the difference between this and the previous one. Here the semicolon is there, comma is there between the square bracket. Here you are putting a separate square bracket. So to say that they are separate, then you write the name of the array, new. The size of the first dimension must be specified. The size of the second dimension need not be specified. What is the meaning of this? When you create an array like this, how many rows it will have must be disclosed right at the beginning. You can't have blank rows, you can't have any number of rows. It is not possible. You have to say that I will take 10 rows. Then the first row may contain 5 elements, second row may contain 10 elements, third may contain 50 elements. That is allowed. How many rows will be there? Individually, how many rows will be there? That has to be disclosed first. So when you create it, you must say new, and the size of this row size must be specified. For example, you create a jagged array, new 2. It means to say that there are 2 rows in this array. How many columns are there for the first one? It is dependent. For the first element, that is jag of 0 will contain 4. Jag of 1 will contain 6 elements. So there will be, the first row will contain, this is same as writing the previous one. First row will contain 4 elements, second row will contain 6 elements. Okay, so let's look at other example over here. This is a full-fledged example. Int a. 2 rows will be there, and the first dimension has 3, second dimension has 4. Okay, how do I get the length of the array? There is a built-in function called as a dot length. If you call the this is an array, a dot length, it will return the length of the first dimension, that is this one. If you take a of 0, so remember a of 0 is this thing, it will return the length of that one. So this is slightly different. If you go to the rectangular array with the 2 cross 3, if you say length of array A, it will return the total number of elements which are there. That's the difference between this and this length and the other one. Look at here, I have the array called jagged array. If I say a dot length, it will return how many rows are there. It won't return how many columns, total of row into column, it won't do that thing. Whereas if I have a rectangular array and if I call a dot length, it will return total number of elements which are there. If I take one of its row, any one of its row, and call a length on that row, it will return how many columns will be available for that given row. Whereas if I want to do the same thing, how many rows are available, then you have to call a dot get length. This is a method directly available because I told you all the arrays are derived from the base class system.array. So all the arrays are derived from that class, so automatically they get some methods. You don't have to mention those methods, they are directly there. So if you call a dot length, this is a property, automatically it will give this value. If you want to get the dimension, or if you want to get the number of elements in the first dimension, then say a dot get and specify the dimension. Dimensions are starting from 0 index. So it when you say get length 0 means to say that this is the first dimension that was specified, that is 2. In the a dot 1 is the second dimension that you have specified here, that is the 3. So this will give, in other words, this will give you a number of rows, and 1 will give number of columns. If you have the third one, if you put one more comma and create one more, get length 2 will give you the other dimension. So it just gives you the total elements within that dimensions. Okay, these are some of the methods which are available. Length will return the length, you are already familiar. Rank is how many dimension it has. In this case, because it's a single dimension, this will return 1 because there is only one dimension. There is the other function called as copy to. Copy to is usually used to copy from one array to the other array. Suppose if you want to copy from one array to the other array, you can directly do that thing. Call on the old array, call copy to, specify the name of the new array, and specify where this indicates from which location it must insert the element. Suppose if this new array already contains 4 elements, then you can say start from the 5th location. So we'll put it at that thing. You directly get a sort on the array, so you don't need to do the sorting. However, sorting must be supported by the type that you are using, so don't expect a magic to happen there. Let's look at all those things in action very quickly. We will go here, and we have this. These are all not required. So how do I create a one-dimensional array? Int, remember you have to put it here. X is equal to I can say new int of 10. This is always valid. Int this is always a valid option, or else you can say int y. Int y is equal to, directly you can say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Straightforward you can do it. There is the other way. Int z is equal to new int. Then you can say 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can do that thing. This is also allowed. All are valid versions. It is not anything. You can straight away do it. But we rarely see this kind of initialization because this one is a shortcut for the second option. So it's much easier to just put the values directly rather than creating a new and do the thing. Let's look at the two-dimensional. So I have this two-dimensional, say mat equal to new int. Say I'll take that 2, 3 matrix, which is usually being taken up by everyone. So this is one way I can do it, or else I can even say this. Let's say mat1 is equal to how do I do it? Okay. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. Okay. This is what is this one? This is same as the previous one. 2 rows and 3 columns. This is the first row. The other one will be the second row. Directly written, directly initialized. This is the rectangular. What about jagged? So let's say jag1 is equal to, how do I do that? New int, specify the first dimension. The second dimension is up to you. Okay, so we get this one. Now jag1 of 0. What is this jag1 of 0? There are 2 dimensions over here. You can specify some value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Anything you can do it. Expect a simple quadratic. Eh, Now you can go. Okay, thank you. In that case, I won't go. I've shown you the slide. No more working. Yeah. I'll quickly wind this up. Assume that you will do it. Okay. This is the other example. I won't show the example. Let's complete the part. The other one is the string concatenation. How do I concatenate a string? Remember, a string is immutable. What is the meaning of saying string is immutable? When you add to string, it creates a new string. So, for example, if you just take a string here, str equal to abc, isn't that this is a string? And str2 is def. Okay, if you take these two things, isn't that this is declared as a string here? Isn't that this is string? Both are string. Now when you add, suppose if you take one more string here, so str3 is equal to str1 plus str2. What it is going to do now is str3, just go here, str3 will now contain a string a, b, c, d, e, f will be there. That's a good thing, you are already familiar. Now if you say str3 is equal to str3 plus z. So what is happening now? Now when this line is executed, what is happening is it will create a new string altogether. That new string will contain a, b, c, d, z. So it will create a new string a, b, c, d, e, f, z. Then it will point it to this one. That means, what is the meaning of it? Once a string is formed, you can't manipulate it. That is why strings are usually called as immutable. You cannot manipulate the string. String remains as a whole. If you combine two string, you get a third new string, not the existing string. If you add something to S3 in the previous case, new string is formed. Let's look at this example. I have an address equal to 2, I get one string. Now if I say address is equal to address plus Sharada Nagar, what will happen now is Sharada Nagar is not added to the address which is here. Sharada Nagar and address is added, new string is created, a separate object is created, and then it is pointed here. So you get a separate string object. Again, when you say address plus Biri, what will happen is now you have this 2 Sharada Nagar, then Biri is added, separate object is created, and that is pointed. That means whenever you try to manipulate a string, every time when you add something to a string or try to remove something out of string, strings are, that object gets recreated, you know very well. There is a slight burden in creating an object because if the system has to go to the heap, ask the allocation, then create an object, make a reference. So there is the overhead that is involved. So if you want to do the concatenation, adding a continuous character to a string, then directly doing this is not a great idea. Instead of that, you can use a separate class called as a string builder class. Now what this will do is, this class allows you to add the additional string to the existing structure. So when you add one more character or one more string to the string builder, it won't create a new string. Instead of that, it will add it to the existing object. So you don't go on creating new string. You can straight away do it. Now this is what you are doing. Suppose if you want to create the same thing but with less overhead, you create a string builder class, then call append. So 2 is added, next time append Sharada Nagar is added, next time Biri is added. So everything is added to the same object. You are not creating new things. Whereas here, when Sharada Nagar is added to the address here, the address was 2 plus Sharada Nagar will create a separate new object. When you say add Biri to it, one more new object is created. That means every time you add something, it goes on creating new object. The old object is definitely garbage collected, but there is a overhead always involved in garbage collecting, getting it from the heap. So what you can do is go for this thing, that is the string builder. Once you have built the entire string, just call toString method on that. It will then create a string object out of it. So that is one thing that you must note. Let me quickly go through the classes. Now we have classes have only one inheritance. That means a class can inherit from only one of its parent class. Unlike C++, you can't have multiple inheritance. So a class can't inherit from more than one class. But a class like Java can always implement more than one interface. This is allowed. Class can implement more than one interface, but class cannot inherit from more than one class. This is same old thing that you have seen it in Java. Then you can have members of the class like constant, field, and other things. Members have their access. What you have in the C# class, which was not there in the Java, is this properties. This is something slightly different from the previous one. You are already familiar. Fields are nothing but the members, which represents the data. The properties allow a simple way of getting and setting the values to a public field. So this getter and setter methods. If you just want to set a value and get a value out of it, then you go for the properties. This is a separate type of fields. Now you know very well, whenever you declare a field, fields are not exposed out to the world. They are always private, unless and otherwise you make them as public. They are not usually exposed out to the world. Whereas the properties are a special type of field. They are always exposed out to the world. So they are public. By default, they are public. You can set a value, you can get a value. However, you can't directly set a value to this field. You have to call a method, and that method is getters and setters. You're already familiar with that. What you have seen in your practical classes is how to use a shortcut. There is a complete version how you write it in your Java, the get value and assign it. That full version is also available, but because to reduce the time, I use a shortcut which is given by C#3 onwards. That shortcut is there. If you just want to set and get without validating the input values, you can directly use that version that you are using in your lab. Then we have this method. Methods are all the actions. The entire action is performed by the method. Event is something that you want to notify, you want to be notified. So when something happens, you want the class to know. In that case, you create the events. Now we have the access level. We have the public, private, internal, protected, and protected internal. Public means anything that is given the access level public is completely available everywhere. Anybody and everyone can use it. Private, only within that class in which it is defined. Internal, it is available to the current class as well as to the assembly. The packaged, I recommend this packaged level of access. It is available. Remember, we don't use the word package. For us, it is assembly. The word is assembly now. So it is available within the assembly. Now, what is protected? It is available to all the derived classes. Protected. It's like a family secret that goes from the parent to all the offsprings, but it is not exposed out to the world. So it is protected. That information is protected. It is kept within the family, not exposed out to the world. We have protected internal. This is a clubbing of two things. All of them within the, like it's a neighborhood. Whatever happens in your house, neighbors also know that thing because they are always listening to what is going on in your house. So it is within the assembly, everybody knows. And you maintain your secret, that is there, okay. Let's go to the default one. Whenever you create a class defaults to internal. Very important. By the way, in Java, if you create a class without specifying public, private, or anything, what is the default accessibility of a class? In Java, that question could come in the metric stream. So, metric stream asks, if you create a class in Java without specifying public, private, or anything with the class, what is the accessibility class has? Do you have something called as a default accessibility? In Java, if you just create a class, So how I have created a class here. Without specifying anything, I just created a class. I have not specified public class, private class or anything. Directly, I am trying to create a class here. Like the same thing if you have done it in Java, what is the visibility of this class? Go and read, that's the essential thing. If you don't specify any accessibility, what is the accessibility of a class? Okay. In this case, it is defaults to internal. What is the meaning of saying internal? It is available to all the other classes which are there in the same assembly, or in terms of Java, will be available within the same package. Okay. What about this members? Members by default, I'm sorry, that are not the member fields. I have not highlighted that thing. Fields are by default private. So whenever you create a variables, all the variables, that is class level variables, they are by default private. They are not exposed out to the world. Whether you say it or not, they are not going to come out to the world. Okay. When you talk about the members, methods, and events, I am going one step ahead. This question again, this could be a question that is usually asked to just find out your level of intelligence. All the methods which are declared in the interfaces have dash visibility. What is the visibility of all the methods which are declared? Okay. It is usually the public. It cannot be private. At least you can just say it can't be private. The reason why it can't be private is the minute you make a method as private, it is not exposed out to the world. The reason why you use the interface is you want somebody else to override this method. So if you don't expose the method out to the world, they can't override it. So it can't be, the best answer is it can't be private. It could be something else, that's a guesswork. But it is not a private because it is not, it must be given out to the world. You are already familiar, except this part. How do I create an enumeration? To create an enumeration, there is a built-in keyword called as enum, followed by the variable name. How you make a string vehicle ID? So the same thing. To create it, enum, enum is the keyword, followed by the enumeration that you want to create it. I think you have done it in your C program. It is same thing that you do it. Then you create a variable out of this. So this make in small case, remember C is case sensitive. They are not one and the same. Make is the enumerator. This make, the small case make, is a variable of type make. So it is the same thing. This is the overridden constructor with the parameter. You take the value and put it, and you will be able to create a class out of it. You have already done that thing. Two types of methods are there. One is static and the other one is instance method. What is static method and what is instance method? Static method, to use a static method, you don't have to create an instance of the object. For example, if you use the Visual Basic math dot, there is a class called math dot sine, math dot cos, math dot, all of them, all the methods of that math class are by default static. You don't have to create a object out of this. So for example, when you create a not this one, when you create a string object, string dot to convert to, this is a class, convert is a class, to method, to, there are many conversions that are possible. This is a static method. You don't have to create an object in order to call that method. It is static. It comes along with the class. It is there with the blueprint. The minute you have the blueprint, you get that method. That is called as static method. What is instance method? You need an object in order to call that thing. So that is the instance method. Then when you think of a method, method could be anything. Constructor, destructors are also methods. Method has an argument list. Method contains some statement inside it. Method may return some values. There are other things that you must know. This one you must know from the industrial point of view. There are two ways in which you write it. One is called as Pascal case. Other one is called as camel case. What is the difference between Pascal case and camel case? Both look alike. In Pascal case, the starting letter is made as capital. So you notice log, L is capital, R is capital. So that when you get this kind of thing, it is Pascal case. What is camel case? It's the same thing, but the first thing that you start, the first letter is in small case. So then it is called as camel case. If you listen to any talk, they usually say that we are using Pascal casing, or Visual Studio even detects camel case and Pascal casing. They just say that this is a well-known thing. If you're not familiar with it, by now you know it. Okay. How do you call a method? You know very well. Just give a method to it and just call it. There are two things that two types of parameter. One is by value and by reference. Whenever you want to pass a value to a method, by default the value is passed to a method, not its reference. What is the meaning? If I pass 10 to a method, or if I pass int x to a method, then if that method makes some modification to that x, my value is not affected because I am sending a value to it. So you know very well, when you call a method, you make a copy of the content and pass it to the method. That is called as pass by value. However, there is a small difference in C#. You can pass it by reference. What is the meaning of it? If you want that method to manipulate this object or this value, and you want to get the updated value directly, then you say pass by reference. I'm going to go very quickly. Give me 10 minutes. I will be able to complete it. Okay. It is half an hour more. It is not. I'm not taking more time. It's just your college. You were supposed to stop at 5 o'clock. It is 5:25. Okay, just look here. I have a, this public was not really required, but this word is really required. Static. I want it as static because I'm calling it from the static. I'm going to say my method, say int x. I'm going to say x equal to 1, 2, 3. Okay, I will say this method returns int. Okay. I missed. I don't want anything to be returned out of this method. Okay, this method is not returning anything. I have it here. So int say L equal to 10. Okay, L value is 10 now. I'm going to call this method my method, and I'm going to pass L. Okay, now if I write console.writeLine and L, you will definitely say that even though I'm passing the value L to this method, because the value is passed, when the method execute, L value will be still 10. The reason is value is passed. Now if I want this value to come back, what is that I am supposed to do? I will make this as ref and this. I will say that this is a reference type value that is being passed. Also here I am going to say I am passing a reference. Okay, look at here, two keywords are added, reference. To say that I want to pass a reference of x, not the value of x. Now what happens is, if I try to run this application, you will notice, surprisingly, you will notice that the value that is taken up by this is 1, 2, 3. What happened here? You will notice here that I sent 10 here, but I sent the reference of 10 to this one. So it made some manipulation because the reference is sent. When I use that same value L here, the value of L was modified by the calling function. So then you can use it. So this is called as reference type. You can pass reference type variable like this. There is the other type of variable that is called as out. Now you can use out as one of this variable, and I will have to make this as out. It does the same thing. Both of them does. If I run the same application, I'm going to get the same result. Okay, 1, 2, 3. It is one and the same. What is the difference between this out and ref? Out is output parameter. What is the meaning of saying output parameter? Is you are expecting a output from that thing. So, for example, you may send a value L without initializing. So, look at here. I just pass L here without putting any value, and I expect the calling function to make some changes, return a value back to me. So, this is called as out. So, this is an output parameter, or the out parameter that is sent. So, you are telling the calling method that I am sending an out parameter, you fill the value, I will take that value. So, I may or may not initialize that thing. Straight away I can give that value. It is assumed that that is a output. Whereas if I make this, I'm going to just change this to ref now. If I make this as ref, I'll get an error message here saying that you are not initialized. When you are using the ref type, they must always be initialized. That is, you must remember that thing. Okay, the reference type must be initialized, then send it. You are sending a reference, but the reference that was initialized, you are sending it to the calling method. Calling method makes some changes, returns the value back to you, then you use it. Whereas when you say out, you don't need to create a object, or you don't need to initialize it. You just give the variable name, and you are expecting something to be created out of that method, and return it. Now remember, if I don't do anything here, this is perfectly alright, there is no error. But suppose if I make changes to this, if I make this as out parameter now, and if I don't make any changes to this particular thing, immediately it says that x was supposed to be an out parameter. You are supposed to make changes to x and send it back. It's an out parameter. Whether you like it or not, put some value to x because any value, initialize it and send it back. It's an output parameter. You are supposed to, this method is supposed to create it. Remember, I would have sent it like this without initializing. I can send it. Then what it will do? It will initialize it, and it will put some value and send it back. So when you have the out as the one of its parameter, then that parameter must be changed. Something must be done with that parameter. If you take the parameter, out parameter, and don't do anything, the compiler just stops and says, you have taken the out parameter, do something with it, make some modification to it, either create a new instance or do something, because it is expected from the, some modification is expected from the other one. The other, I'm going to go quick because you are also impatient. The next one is, how do I pass the parameters? Now you are already familiar. Sometimes some methods takes more than one value. For example, if I want to add, you might have seen this Excel. Excel has this average. You can find the average of 2 numbers. You can find the average of 3 numbers, average of 10 numbers. That means that particular method takes variable number of parameters. Suppose if you want to take create a method that takes variable number, so now it may take 2 parameter, next time it may take 5 parameter, third time it may take 10 parameter. For example, you have this static void main. How many arguments that you can pass? It is up to you. You can pass any number of arguments. If you want to do that thing, then you have to use a keyword called as params. So params followed by the array of type that you are expecting. Now in this case, I am expecting a array of integers to be passed. If you want an array of string to be passed, you can call it as string followed by the name of the variable, then you can use it. If you want, for example, in this case, if you want to have this one, for example, a number, then a set of characters. If you want to do that, how to create that thing. So you have the printf object argument. Remember, the parameters must be the last argument within the given method call. That means you can't have two parents as the variable type or as the parameter list. There can be only one parent list and it must appear as the last option. For example, I don't remember where I use that thing. For example, here, if you notice here, I'm taking an integer. Okay, I can take a float, I can take a double, I can take the thing. The last one is this parents. I can't start with parents, then take int, then float. It is not allowed. If you are using parents, it must be the last one to come, and there can be only one parents. You can't have one more comma, one more parents for string, one more parents for integer. That's not allowed. The parameter list is only once. You can specify it only once, not more than once. So if you expect a floating point number to come or something, you make it as a array of a string and use it. So when you have the parameters, parameter typed the option, then use the parents only once, not more than once. That is, with that I think I'm going to stop here.